After the frustrating loss to the Ravens, the Lions are getting set to prepare to play against the Raiders on Monday Night Football. But they're coming into this game with a renewed sense of focus and determination as they're angry after the embarrassing loss they just had. We're going to talk about it in today's episode, folks, so stay tuned. It started with an owner who had a last name fans despised, hiring a coach that the experts thought was crazy.
But I got a plan, I swear to you.
Who traded for a QB that was said to be washed up. They said the Detroit Lions would never amount to anything, that it would always be the same old Lions. But this team, our team, has a new identity, defined and expressed by the crazy head coach.
Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes, I will beat your ass.
Led by the QB that nobody thought was good. Motor City Mania is in full swing and ready to start. So join the show and be prepared for kneecap biting, because Motor City Mania starts right now. Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host David T. Pike, and we're diving in right now. As always, to those that are returning to the show, I just want to say thank you all for coming back. Thank you all for your view, your support, your patronage. Thank you all for everything that you do. And for those that are tuning into my show for the very first time or are coming back after a long hiatus, hopefully you guys all enjoy the content. And if I haven't gained your subscription already, hopefully I gain it. And I just want to say to everybody, God bless. And let's dive into the content. So here's the thing, folks. When we take a look at this game that the Lions have coming up against the Las Vegas Raiders, I have to remind myself that they're now Las Vegas, not Oakland. When we think about this, the game that the Lions have coming up against the Raiders, this is a big, big game for the Lions. It's also a big game for the Raiders, but I'm not a Raiders fan, I'm a Lions fan, so let's get that straight. When you think about this, big game. Huge game for the Lions that's upcoming. And it's a big game for a lot of reasons. But let's take a look at why it's big right now. One, the Lions are getting set for their third primetime bout of the season, because you have to understand something. The Lions have already had two primetime games prior to this. Both of them were on Thursday Night Football, and the Lions won both of those games on Thursday Night Football. However, though, what's different about this game is, number one, it's not on Thursday night. It's on Monday Night Football, so the Lions are going to get an extra day of rest and preparation as they get ready for the game against the Raiders. But also, number two, this is the Lions' first primetime game at home this year, because the last two primetime games we had were on the road. So this is a pretty big game for the Lions because, one, the Lions normally don't have primetime games at home, number one, so that's huge. But also, number two, we don't normally have three primetime games in a season, so that's pretty big. And we haven't even gotten to dang Thanksgiving yet, so it's like, okay, this is a big game. This is a big moment for the Lions. Now, let's put this into context, because, again, I am very much about keeping things in context. I'm a historical guy. I'm a history major from college, so we have to keep things in context in terms of a horizontal timeline. Either way, let's think about this, folks. Just last week, the Lions took an absolute just pummeling from the Ravens when we lost 38-6. But, however, despite that loss, the Lions are 5-2. They still hold the best record in their division, and they're pretty much feeling pretty good about themselves. Even though we just lost, you have to take a look at the process that we had prior to this, the progress that we had. We had just won 4 straight in a row. So it's like, listen, was the loss against the Ravens disheartening, embarrassing, frustrating, sickening, whatever term you'd like to use? Yes, it was. But all things considered, at 5-2, the Lions are in an immaculate position, considering the fact that there were a lot of people that thought, maybe the Lions might get to almost 500. There were very few people that thought the Lions might get to 5-2 or have a chance to be at 6-2 before the bye. I was one of them. I know there were a lot of other people that thought the same way, but it was like, listen, there were some people that were really concerned. They're like, hey, we go and play against the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs. We get the Seahawks. We also have the Ravens. They're like, maybe we might be 4-4. We might be 5-3. Who knows? The whole point of the matter is that the Lions are in a really good spot getting ready to go into the bye here after this game against the Raiders. Now, let's think about this also from the Lions' opponent's perspective. Because here's the thing. I'm going to say this right now. While the Lions lost against the Ravens, that was very bad. That was disheartening. I'm going to say this right now. If I'm the Raiders, I feel even worse. Because let's think about this, folks. The Lions got destroyed by an AFC powerhouse. We got destroyed by an AFC bully. The Raiders, on the other hand, I'm sorry. The Raiders got embarrassed by the Bears. And the reason why I keep saying this is because the Bears are arguably one of the worst teams in the NFL right now. Like, I don't care what anyone wants to say. I don't care what any Bears fan wants to say. You're still one of the worst teams in the NFL right now. And again, there's a reason why a lot of teams look at the Bears that way, because it's like, listen, you guys just simply still have not figured out how to win games more often than not. And again, you have to think about how bad it was for the Raiders when they played against the Bears. Because, okay, let's think about this. First and foremost, the Bears beat the Raiders 30-12. That's not something that normally happens with the Bears these days. But to make matters worse, to make the embarrassment even worse for the Raiders, you guys lost to the this is going to sound really weird, but just give me my moment here. To make matters worse, the freaking Bears won with a UDFA Division II college rookie by the name of Tyson Bagent at quarterback. Now, the reason why that name ought to sound familiar to some of my Lions fans is I actually talked about him as potentially being a quarterback that maybe Brad Holmes might want to bring in. Obviously, we went with Hendon Hooker as a third-round rookie draft pick, but it's like, listen, if you're the Raiders, it's like, okay, this was Tyson Bagent's very first start as a quarterback in the NFL. Maybe not his very first NFL experience, but this was his very first start, and you give a guy his first win as a Division II college quarterback. Not a Division I quarterback. This guy played in Division II ball. So again, I'm just trying to put this in perspective here because I'm sorry, I would have thought that the Raiders would have won that game. And the fact of the matter is, not only did they lose that game against the Bears, they lost pretty bad. So that right there, if there's any sort of like consolation, if there's any sort of consolidation, if you will, to take from the fact that we lost against the Ravens in bad form, at least we lost against an AFC powerhouse. The freaking Raiders lost against pretty much the dung heap of the NFL in the Bears. Just going to put it out there for what it is. Now, moving into the basis of this whole show, we're talking about the Lions refocusing. We're talking about the Lions getting their quote-unquote poop in a group and getting their mind back on winning here. So we have to think about this. The Lions, much like the Raiders, they're looking to get back in the win column with this big primetime game that's coming up for both teams. And like I said, it's a big primetime game for both of them. And the reason why it's a big primetime game for both of them is, well, for one, the Raiders right now are 3-4. If they get a win on primetime, it's going to get them back to 500 on the year. So that's a big game for them because they're trying to get back to 500. But for the Lions, this game is even much more important than that because think about it. If the Lions win this game, we go to 6-2 on the year. And at that point, we're also heading into our bye week because our bye week is right after that. We head into our bye week with a win, and also with momentum moving into the second half of the year. Because with that bye week, we'll have the win on the back of our success, on our back of our record. So we're feeling good about that. We're going to have an extra week to get ready for the second half of the year because we're going to be getting healthy. We're going to have an extra week to prepare for our next game, which would be against the Chargers after we come out of the bye week. So again, getting this win before we go into the bye week is going to be really, really crucial to the Lions. Now, we're talking about this game against the Raiders, right? Well, let's be fair and honest here. I like to watch a lot of press conferences that the Lions have, and I'm telling you this right now. The most recent press conference that Dan Campbell had, I'm going to tell you this right now. You could hear it in his voice, but you could also see it in his body language. You could just tell that Dan Campbell was both angry and he was determined. Now, what was he angry about? He wasn't necessarily angry about, the players or anything else. He was angry about the fact that the Lions didn't even get a chance to really play well against the Ravens. And again, it's not necessarily that he's angry about the fact that the Lions lost. Obviously, no team, no player, no coach likes to lose. But as Dan Campbell said, it's like, listen, he said, we were never really even in that game. It's like we didn't even really get a chance to do anything because we didn't even really show up. So it didn't even look like we were really a competitive factor in that game. And it's like, that right there is probably something that's very, very angry for a guy like Dan Campbell and for these players, because it's like, listen, they know they're better than that, and we've seen them be better than that. So for Dan Campbell and these Lions, that's definitely a very angry thing to consider, because it's like, listen, you guys were never even really a competitive factor in that game against the Ravens. But then you have to take a look at the other side for Dan Campbell. He sounded resolute. He sounded resolved. He sounded determined, because it was like, and he actually said about it, he's like, listen, I am going to make sure that these guys are ready to play against the Raiders. And the reporters kind of actually clarified, they actually doubled down on it. They're like, what exactly do you mean by that? He's like, listen, all I know is I'm going to have our guys ready to play. Our guys will be ready to play. I can guarantee you that. I don't think he used the word guarantee, but if he did, the whole point of the matter is, I guarantee you this. There's no way the Lions and Dan Campbell are walking into Ford Field on Monday night not being focused, not being ready to play against the Raiders. Because I'm telling you this right now. Like I'm saying right now in this moment of my episode, and like I'm saying in the title of my episode, the Lions, just put it for all points and purpose, they're pissed off. They are pissed that they didn't even really look all that good against the Ravens when that was a game that they could come out and make a statement, and the statement they made was the exact opposite of the one they wanted to make. So yeah, the Lions, they're pissed off. They're angry. They are looking to take out some proverbial can of ass whooping on the next team that they get to play, which that would be the Raiders. And let's think about this, folks. I'm not trying to make any new enemies, especially from opposing teams, but the Raiders are not exactly the best team in the world. In fact, the Raiders are kind of at best. The best way I could describe the Raiders at their best moment are a middling team. Sometimes they do okay, sometimes they don't. But let's be entirely fair and honest, the Raiders have not really been a good team for a long time. And so you have to think about it this way. The Lions, they're pissed off, they're angry, they're playing at home, it's a primetime game, it's a big game for them. Yeah, if you're the Raiders, this is a game that you definitely didn't want to have happen. Because right now, the Lions, they're looking at you with with just absolute hunger, because they just want to take out all their pent-up frustration after what happened to them against the Ravens out on you. And you, my friend, are the next one in the docket, so good luck. But I'm just going to say this. How do the Lions win this game against the Raiders? Well, there are a couple things we have to consider here before we kind of wrap this whole thing up. The first thing I'm going to say right now is the Lions absolutely, 100% must do above all else in this game. Run the damn ball. You have got to get this running game going, because let's be entirely honest here. The running game that has been a staple, a bread and butter of both Dan Campbell's offensive style and how Ben Johnson gets this offense going, has virtually all but disappeared against the last two games that we've played. It wasn't really there against the Ravens, and it definitely wasn't there against the Buccaneers. So one thing that absolutely has to happen in this game for the Lions is they've got to get the run game going. We've got to get over 100 yards on the ground. Hopefully we can get Jahmyr Gibbs his first 100-yard rushing game, because I don't think David Montgomery is going to play in this game. So again, that's something that definitely has to happen, because this is a great game for the Lions to get themselves back on track in the rushing department for their offense, because you got to think about this. The Raiders are ranked 29th in the NFL for total rushing yards allowed, because they've given up 903 total yards rushing. There are only 3 teams that have got worse rushing outputs in terms of their defense than the Raiders. So this will be an opportunity for the Lions to get back into the rushing department that they've been used to having for the games that were prior to the Bucs and the Ravens. And here's the other thing about running the ball. You get that run game going, it's going to open up the play action passing, which is what Jared Goff is at his absolute best of doing. Again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, and many other analysts have said the exact same thing. Jared Goff is the best quarterback off of play action passing. The stats prove it every time we see him do a play action pass. Almost something good almost always happens. So again, running the ball is absolutely paramount for the Lions. You're going up against a very weak rush defense, which is going to help the running game, which is then going to help the play action game. So this is a perfect game for our Lions to get back into their normal offensive identity. That's number one. Number 2, the Lions have got to freaking protect Jared Goff a lot better. And I know somebody out there, because I know there are a couple people that have been trying to go back to the old SOL mindset with Jared Goff. They're going to say, oh, well, if Jared Goff was more mobile, if Jared Goff was more athletic, we wouldn't be having the problems with Jared Goff taking sacks. Bullcrap. Y'all don't know what the thunder you're talking about, because there have been quarterbacks that have been playing very, very well despite being pocket passers, even up until the last couple of years. Freaking Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, they were playing pocket passing style, and they were playing just fine. In fact, the both of them just won Super Bowls within the last 10 years playing that style. So I don't really give a thunder about pocket passing, because Jared Goff is more athletic as far as being able to run and move than both Tom Brady and Peyton Manning ever would be or ever will be. But think about it this way, folks. I'm sorry I got off on a tangent there. Over the last 2 games, Jared Goff has been sacked a total of 8 times. That's a lot in the last 2 games. But when you consider how much it is for Jared Goff over the totality of this season, it gets even worse. Because on the season in total, Jared Goff has been sacked 15 times. Now, wait a minute here. I just said the last 2 games he's been sacked 8 times, which means on the total of the season of 15 sacks prior to the last 2 games, Jared Goff had only been sacked 7 times. That means in the first 4 games, Jared Goff was only sacked 7 times, and in these last 2 games, he was sacked 8 times. That means he's been sacked more times in these last 2 games than the previous 4 games prior to that, all combined. That's bad. And that means that you have to take a look at some of these offensive linemen, particularly our tackles, Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell, and be like, okay, you guys have got to do a better job of holding up the edge rushers and making sure that guys don't get free shots at the quarterback. And this is especially true with the opponent that we've got against the Raiders, because everybody knows the main weapon for that Raiders defense. It's edge rusher Max Crosby. And Max Crosby right now is having a really damn good year, folks. He's got 6.5 sacks. He's tied for 7th most in the NFL right now. The freaking tackles of the Lions, Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker, they have got to bring their A game. They have got to keep Jared Goff protected. They cannot let Max Crosby take over this game. Otherwise, it's going to be a very, very long day for Goff. It's going to be a very long day for the Lions offense. But again, protecting Jared Goff is going to go all the way back to also running the football, because if we get that run game going, it's going to, 1, free up those lanes to be allowed for the running back to get through the offensive line, number 1. But then again, like I also said, it also gets the play action game going, which again is also going to make the job easier for the offensive line blocking for Goff, but also get those wide receivers more loose in secondary space. So again, running the ball, that's why I started that with number 1. That is the key. That is the most paramount thing that the Lions offense must do, because it's going to help out everything else. So protect Goff, number 2. Sorry here. Now, we need to go to number 3 here. This one goes to the freaking Raiders offense and to the Detroit Lions defense. We have got to stop Davante Adams. Because think about this. The Lions are very, very well acquainted with Adams from his time when he was out in Green Bay. We know the type of player Davante Adams is. And even if we didn't know what Davante Adams was as a player, I mean, for crying out loud, you turn on YouTube, you turn on NFL Network, you're going to see the type of player that Davante Adams is. He is a freaking force of nature. He is somebody that has to be accounted for at all time, or he's going to reckon with you. He is just that good of a player. Now, you have to think about just how really good Davante Adams is, because the Raiders offense, again, has not been all that good this year. At best, the Raiders offense is kind of subpar. And despite the fact that the Raiders offense has struggled to find any sort of consistency or rhythm this year, that has not at all slowed down Adams' productivity as a member of the team or as a wide receiver in the NFL, because he's still considered one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And I still consider them that, because think about it this way. Like I said, the Raiders offense is very inconsistent. But despite that, Davante Adams is ranked 11th in total pass receiving yards in the Raiders offense. That right there is something that is a testament to Davante Adams' ability to still make plays despite the fact that he's dealing with inconsistent quarterback play. The offense of the Raiders has almost no rhythm to it, but yet he's still just outside of the top 10 as a receiving threat in the NFL. So what does that mean? The Lions have got to make sure that he is covered. They've got to make sure that they take him away as a pass threat for the Raiders quarterbacks, so that makes them much more likely to get sacked and much more likely to throw incompletions. So again, stopping Davante Adams for this Lions defense has got to be a top priority this week. That was point number 3. Now, let's take a look at the last key to victory that I'm going to put out here before I end this episode. The last key to victory is this. The Lions have got to sack or pressure the quarterback. The reason I'm saying this is because if you think about it, over the last 3 weeks, the Lions have only gotten 2 freaking sacks. It's just like where we were when we started the season, where over the first 2 weeks, we only had 1 sack. The Lions have got to get back to pressuring and sacking the quarterback, because think about this. When you take a look at the Raiders quarterbacks, we don't know if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to play on Monday night. There's a decent chance that he might. But whether or not it's Jimmy G or his primary backup Brian Hoyer is playing, neither of them have played very well this year. And if you think about that, neither of them are very, very mobile either. In fact, if you realistically want to think about it, Jared Goff is much more mobile, much more athletic than both of them. So for the Lions pass rushers, Aiden Hutchinson, Romeo Okwara, Julian Okwara, John Kaminsky, whoever you want to put out there, for all of the pass rushers that we potentially have, this is a perfect opportunity for them to ramp up the pressure and get those sacks that have been missing and get this defense's aggressive nature back on track. Because again, the Lions have got to get back to sacking the quarterback, because the Raiders' dysfunctional offense, this is a perfect opportunity for you to do so. This is a perfect opportunity to kind of take out some of your pent-up frustration from playing against Lamar Jackson last week when you you virtually couldn't touch him. You might get close, but we couldn't seem to get a hand on him to actually bring him down. This is the exact opposite this week. Neither Jimmy G or Brian Hoyer are a Lamar Jackson. Though to be entirely fair, almost nobody's a Lamar Jackson in terms of how well he can evade and, get out of pressure situations. But again, that is another huge key to victory. Sack, pressure the quarterback. Don't care if it's Jimmy Garoppolo. Don't care if it's Brian Hoyer. Hell, I don't care if it's Aiden O'Connell. Just get the just get the dude to the ground. Sack him, pressure him, make his life a living hell. So anyway, folks, that right there, those are my keys to victory, and this is why I'm saying that this is a game where the Lions are going to get a chance to refocus. They're going to take that pissed off mindset that they had, their angry mindset, and they are going to exercise that frustration off onto the Raiders on Monday Night Football. Because again, this is the type of game where after you get your butt whooped against the AFC powerhouse, okay, we're going to refocus. We're going to get our mind right. We're going to come in a big primetime game on Monday Night Football, and we're going to get back to our winning ways. Again, I'm not guaranteeing a victory for the Lions against the Raiders. But for me, it's like, listen, you take a look at the betting odds. The Lions have already opened up as like a 7.5, 8-point favorite. Everybody expects the Lions to win this one, and I expect the Lions are going to win. I'm just not going to say I'm guaranteeing a victory, because again, any given Sunday, a team might come out and they might just look like they're the best team in the world. So again, as dysfunctional as the Raiders have been this year, they could just damn well surprise us. I'm hoping that's not the case, but again, I'm keeping my guard up for anything, because it's like, listen, after the Ravens game, I'm not taking any game for granted. You have to go out there and you got to sock the other team in the mouth, and that's exactly what I think the Lions are going to do, because that's exactly what Dan Campbell is saying he's going to have them ready for. But as I just wanted to say, I hope you guys enjoyed my video content. I hope you guys liked what I had to say. Hopefully I gained your subscription. And without further ado, I just want to say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode that I got coming out after this one. I also encourage y'all, please, to do one of these 3 things or all 3 of them. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you not had a chance to do so, first and foremost, again, I highly encourage y'all to please subscribe to the channel. But also, after you've subscribed to the channel, make sure you turn on that bell notification icon that goes along with it, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out later on. Again, subscription numbers are always going up. They've been going up really, really well lately. But let's make sure we turn on the bell notification icon, so that way you guys never miss any updates and you always are in the know-how for when I have something coming out. I also encourage y'all, please share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it everywhere and anywhere that you can with everybody and anybody that you can, so that way we can continue to grow the channel and we can continue to have really good dialogue talking about not only Lions football, but football in general. And as always, I just want to say again, thank you all for tuning back into the show. Thank you all for your attention. Thank you all for your view, your support, your patronage. Hopefully I gained your subscription if I hadn't done so already. And with that, I just want to say God bless, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in my next episode. And until that time, I'll see you all later.